Hey, welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we're digging into some really fascinating and, frankly, pretty wild stuff.
Absolutely. We've got excerpts here from Wendelle C. Stevens' message from the Pleiades Volume 3, which, well, it's compiled from alleged contact notes
Yeah.
between a man named Edward Billy Meier and beings he claims are from the Pleiades.
Yeah, the Pleiades star cluster.
Yeah.
And our mission here is, pretty straightforward. We're going to unpack this specific source material, pull out the most important nuggets, the surprising claims, and really try to understand the perspectives presented within these notes, both the human contactees and the alleged extraterrestrials.
Right.
And you should probably buckle up because this material covers an absolutely massive scope.
Yeah.
I mean, everything from claimed face-to-face sightings, detailed interaction.
Right, like personal stuff.
Exactly. And then it zooms out to these sprawling historical narratives. We're talking hundreds of thousands of years, multiple star systems, plus some pretty intense prophecies about Earth's future. It's a lot. And it's all presented, supposedly, through the lens of this extraterrestrial contact.
Mm-hmm. All from their viewpoint, as recorded in the notes.
Right. So let's jump in and see what this source material actually has to say. Okay, first up, setting the scene. Some of the early contact events described in the notes. There's this specific observation mentioned. Meier and some others went to a spot near like a wooded area with cameras.
Yeah, they were apparently expecting a demonstration from Semjase, who's one of the main alleged Pleiadian contacts in these volumes.
So there was a snag, right?
Yes, what's interesting is the unexpected hiccup straight away. Even though it was late at night, there were tons of cars nearby. Apparently there was some kind of festival going on.
Ugh.
And Semjase, according to the notes, prefers minimal witnesses. Something about her ship's energy emissions being visible to others.
Okay, that makes sense within the context, but she still showed up.
Apparently so. The notes say she came anyway, didn't want to disappoint them. So around 2:15 a.m., clear sky, the demonstration supposedly began.
And what did they report seeing?
Well, they described seeing a reddish disk first, then a silver one, and then a third disk that some witnesses apparently described as having 3 colors.
3 colors. Okay.
And there's this really unique detail mentioned. A silver disk high up that released what the source calls a glittering drizzle of rain downward.
Glittering drizzle, like energy.
The notes clarify these as energy burnings coming from the ship, but they don't always look like the ship itself, apparently. Then the ship took off slowly, appearing as just a red point getting smaller and smaller.
Okay, now here's where it gets, well, really interesting and maybe a bit confusing, based on the source material itself. The photos didn't always match what they saw with their eyes.
Right. Visually, they're describing clear disks, this red point. But the film and photos, sometimes they showed different formations altogether, or like the sharp disk shape only in the very first shots. Then later shots, just light.
Yeah. And wasn't there something about a number?
Yes. That's a really surprising detail. One photo is mentioned as showing a snow-white sharp number, the number 1, which is, quite a contrast to flying disks or light formations.
Definitely not a typical UFO photo claim.
Yeah.
So the big question is, why the difference? Seeing a physical ship, but getting photos of just light or other shapes.
Well, the source does provide Semjase's explanation later on. She apparently claims their advanced technology allows them to, mask parts of the ship by sectors.
Mask it? How?
Leaving a channel open to the ground where they could reportedly hear a whirring tone. And she links the transparency, the ship appearing transparent, to that tone.
So the sound changes how it looks.
The higher the whirring tone, the more transparent the ship could appear to Meier from his angle. That's the claim. So this masking, or partial transparency, is the explanation given in the notes for why photos might capture light effects or weird forms, not the whole ship they saw visually.
Huh. So the source attributes the photo anomalies not to, say, camera issues or something mundane, but to the ship's own tech, making it look different in pictures versus reality.
Precisely. That's the explanation offered within these contact notes.
Okay, so moving beyond the sightings themselves, the real core of this material is the communication, right? What did they actually talk about? And what do these notes tell us about this claimed Pleiadian culture?
Right, let's unpack that. First off, just the challenge of getting the message across. The contact notes reportedly were translated multiple times.
Which the source itself highlights, yeah. It stresses that accuracy needs both transliteration, just changing the words directly, and interpretation, rephrasing to try and capture the original idea.
Which immediately tells you there's potential for things getting lost or changed along the way, even according to them.
Absolutely. It points to the inherent difficulty, doesn't it? Conveying complex, maybe alien concepts across languages, across cultures. The communication format itself was often just Q&A, Meier asking questions, maybe from him or his group.
And the Pleiadians giving answers. So what kind of life aspects did they cover? Quite a few, according to the notes. Like health. They apparently say they can catch things, like colds or pneumonia, which they say they can control or cure easily.
Okay, so not totally immune to everything.
No, but their scientists have apparently mastered most unknown diseases, mostly. Here's a really significant claim, though.
What's that?
They state there is one disease they cannot cure. And, get this, they won't share the knowledge of its cure with Earth humans. Not yet, anyway.
Why not? What's the reason given?
Fear of destructive misuse. That's the phrase used in the source. They claim the knowledge holds too much force, too much power for what they assess as Earth humanity's current level of evolution.
Wow, that's quite a statement about their view of us.
Yeah.
And the responsibility that comes with powerful knowledge.
It really is. It frames a lot of their other interactions, potentially. What are things like population control? The source says they don't use Earth-like birth control pills. They rely on natural laws, periodic regulations.
So more natural methods.
Yeah, they mention using natural plant substances to prevent pregnancy. It's voluntary, unless overpopulation becomes a threat to the planet's capacity.
And if it does?
Then a command is introduced, which the source insists is harmless, unlike it implies Earth methods.
Interesting distinction. What about jobs or professions?
They apparently don't really use the term like we do. Semjase, for example, is said to have learned several skills in an Earth sense, but her main tasks are connected to spiritual education.
And government. Any details there?
The source claims they have no administration as we think of it, just a high council that gives advice. Importantly, it says they never give commands or orders, only advice.
Advice, not commands. That's a key difference.
Definitely. And what's fascinating here is that the notes offer a glimpse beyond just the Pleiadians. They introduce other claimed races.
Oh, really? Like who?
Like a being named Minara from a planet called Oeon, supposedly in the Vega system, described as having very dark skin. The source uses the term like the Hottentots and speaking a language called Genan.
Wow, okay. So expanding the picture.
Absolutely. And Semjase apparently mentions her own language as a cosmos language that reaches beyond even their galaxy.
So according to these notes, the picture quickly broadens from just one alien group visiting Earth to a much wider, interconnected cosmic community, different races, different languages. It's a complex universe they're describing.
Exactly. It sets the stage for some of the really large-scale historical claims that come next.
All right, let's talk history, but yeah, definitely not the kind you learned in school. This section of the source material goes deep. Ancient history from this alleged extraterrestrial perspective. It's sprawling and contains some truly extraordinary claims.
It really does. First, just a quick clarification on terms they use. The source says the Pleiadians call any large star with smaller bodies orbiting it a sun system. That includes Jupiter and Saturn for them.
Whereas we'd call those planet systems, right?
Exactly. Semjase reportedly acknowledges this difference and agrees to try and use Earth terms moving forward in the context to avoid confusion. Just a small point, but interesting.
Fair enough. Okay, so now for the big history lesson from the Pleiades, supposedly. According to these notes, way, way back, like 230,000 years ago, there was a major conflict, a liberation war, in the Lyra and Vega systems.
Yeah, against what the source calls terrorizing armies, led by a figure named IHWH Asael. That's IHWH spelled out.
IHWH Asael. That it seems important in these narratives.
It appears multiple times, yes. Asael supposedly fled after this war with a huge fleet, something like 183 great spacers, 253 reconnaissance ships, hundreds of thousands of crew.
Wow. And his descendants
are referred to in the notes as the Eris Nation, also sometimes called the Hyperboreans.
Okay, Hyperboreans. Now, how do they connect to Earth's history, according to this?
Well, here's the claim. The Eris Nation, supposedly fueled by hate and desire for revenge, managed to increase their lifespan to thousands of years, and they wanted control over Earth.
Thousands of years.
Okay. And they allegedly attacked Earth around 13,000 years ago under a leader called IHWH Aros. They supposedly conquered northern lands, which the source links to Hyperborea, and later suggests corresponds geographically to Florida because of Earth's axis shifting over time.
Florida as ancient Hyperborea.
Yeah, very specific. The source also mentions interactions with Sumerians, described as tall, dark-skinned Europid people, and they supposedly came from beings called Syrians who had settled on Earth even earlier, maybe 33,000 years ago.
So layers upon layers of alleged extraterrestrial settlement and interaction.
Exactly. And this Arus guy's son, Arus II, supposedly attacked areas where the Sumerians were living, India, Pakistan, Persia regions, causing the Sumerians to flee south.
Okay, this is a dense history. What about Atlantis and Mood? Did they feature?
Oh, absolutely, but maybe not how you'd expect. According to these notes, Atlantis and Mood didn't just sink, they mutually destroyed each other.
Wiped each other out.
11,498 years ago, the source states, and it blames scientists from Mu for causing it. It calls this the first great catastrophe of the last 12,000 Earth years.
Huh. The source acknowledges there might be different dates from Earth sources, right?
Yes, it mentions a slight contradiction, noting an Earth calculation by Otto Mach placed Atlantis' destruction at a different specific date and time, so it flags that discrepancy itself.
Okay, but maybe the most, dramatic cosmic claim in this history section is about something called the Destroyer.
Ah, yes, the Destroyer. Described as a planetoid or maybe a giant comet. The source says it first crashed about 10,215 years ago, but its story wasn't over then.
What else did it supposedly do?
This destroyer allegedly kept messing with Venus's orbit, repeatedly over thousands of years. It apparently brought Venus dangerously close to Earth multiple times.
And that caused problems.
The source directly links one of these close passes to causing the massive Santorini volcanic eruption and associated catastrophes. Eventually, its orbit time supposedly changed around 605 years ago by their count, so it no longer significantly affects our solar system other than minor irregularities.
That's a radically different view of solar system history. And the IHWH line of rulers, what happened to them?
The narrative continues with that lineage. Arus, the one who attacked Earth, was allegedly murdered by his third son, Jmo Viven. He then ruled the Hyperboreans and 3 Earth nations.
It sounds like some kind of space opera dynasty.
It really does. This line of rulers, according to the notes, only ended very recently relative to when the notes were made. The last one, Kamagal II, supposedly died on December 27, 1976.
Just before this volume's context. Wow. And what about remnants?
The source mentions remaining intelligences of Biza, described as old, weak, but still power-hungry. And it predicts they'll only last about 3 more decades from that point in the late 70s.
So fizzling out.
Seems to be the implication. Other figures are mentioned too, like Pite and Salam, sons of a murdered Jehov, who later ruled with Hyperboreans and emigrants. It's complex.
And you thought that was everything. The source also talks about giants. Actual giants.
Yep, settling on Earth in earlier epochs, citing places like Sacsayhuaman in Peru as examples of their work. Their alleged footprints were legendary, like 90 centimeters long.
90 centimeters. That implies,
Yeah.
what, 6, 7 meters tall?
The source estimates an average height around 6 to 6.5 meters based on that. These giants are credited in the notes with creating statues and formations, like the egg-shaped stones on Easter Island.
What about those?
The source claims those represent the shape of their old spaceships.
Egg-shaped spaceships. Okay.
Mhm.
What happened to these giants?
They allegedly suffered some unknown epidemic, left Earth in their ships, and are basically presumed vanished or dead. The ancient hero Gilgamesh's height is also brought up, suggesting based on an old measurement standard, the Great Ancient El, he might have been over 7 meters tall.
Goodness. So are we related to them, according to this?
The source claims the giant size decreased over millennia while on Earth, and that Pleiadians and current Earth humans are later direct descendants, now having a similar average size. Though it notes exceptions exist, like dwarf or gigantic races elsewhere in the cosmos.
It covers a lot of ground. Anything else in this history dump?
Just a couple of quick notes. Names like Semjase supposedly correspond to the individual's spiritual evolution or knowledge level, and something called light flakes are described not living beings, but condensed spiritual energies from creation generated by will and ideas.
Light flakes. Okay. And then there was that mention of Nazis.
Ah, yes. Finally, this historical dive includes claims related to alleged Nazi V7 weapons. The source mentions a report about German scientists evacuated to South America after the war.
And they were building.
Flying discs. called Hanabu. The source mentions Hanabu III was planned as a Mars craft, and Hanabu IV was even larger. Also, another series called Vril flying discs, highly maneuverable, using what the source calls electrogravitic engines, supposedly built in 1940s Germany.
And what happened to these scientists?
The source claims they were picked up by the U.S. and Russia after the supposed evacuation.
Right. So again, just to be clear for everyone listening, all of the vast historical narrative, the giants, the IHWHs, the Nazi tech, it's all presented within the source material as information supposedly relayed from the alleged Pleiadian contacts to Meier.
Exactly. We're reporting what the notes claim.
Yeah.
Quite a story. Okay, let's maybe pivot from the vast cosmic history for a moment. Let's talk about the challenges described in these notes, both the difficulties faced by Meier and his group on Earth, and the alleged Pleiadians' own perspective on humanity and, well, the path forward.
Right, let's unpack this section. The source definitely highlights significant opposition from outside the group. There's a specific person mentioned, Carlo Dish. He's alleged to have, well, lied about his motives and contacts, tried to infiltrate the group for personal gain or dominance.
So internal group struggles or external interference presented as a problem. The notes also claim there were specific groups in Germany and Switzerland actively trying to disrupt Meier's mission, using intrigues and lies, is the phrase used, aiming to damage his public image.
Standard stuff for controversial figures, maybe, but presented here as part of the challenge. Interestingly, the source also reveals that the alleged Pleiadians, well, they weren't just passively sharing information. They admit to a strategy in their initial public contact efforts.
Oh, what kind of strategy?
Semjase states their lessons and articles, the stuff put out publicly, were partly an examination, a way to understand Earth human opinions and views.
That's fascinating. Why did they need to do it that way?
The claim is they couldn't analyze humans internally, like scan thoughts maybe. So they used Meier as a channel, a sort of probe for this examination.
Wow. They even supposedly calculated odds on him cooperating.
Yeah, a 34% probability, the source says, that Meier might act against their wishes and hinder this examination process.
Okay, and here's where it gets really complex regarding free will versus, well, manipulation. Pa, another alleged Pleiadian figure.
Yes.
He later reveals, according to the notes, that he ordered thought impulses sent to group members, including Meier himself.
Thought impulses. To do what?
The stated reason was to induce feelings of fear or danger related to them taking larger journeys or giving big lectures about the Pleiadians' existence.
And why would they do that?
The purpose given in the source was explicitly to keep Meier grounded, focused on fulfilling his specific mission, rather than becoming, perhaps, a globe-trotting lecturer too early.
That's ethically complex, isn't it? Admitting to influencing thoughts, even for what they saw as a good reason.
Definitely raises questions. The source also includes some pretty sharp critiques of Earth's UFO community at the time. Semjase allegedly describes many groups as misled ones.
Misled how?
Focused on, fantastic, technical, or paranormal explanations. Searching for the wow factor, maybe, while neglecting what the Pleiadians saw as the core mission and spiritual values. Focusing only on the material aspects, the ships, not the message.
Okay. On a more practical level, money comes up, right? Meier was frustrated.
Yes, he expresses frustration in the notes about the lack of financial help for the group's center they wanted to build, but Semjase, according to the source, flat out refused direct financial aid.
Why? What was her reasoning?
As presented in the notes, her logic was that financial help would actually be a danger. It would make people stop striving themselves, lose their fighting spirit, and just become dependent on the Pleiadians.
So, tough love approach.
Seems like it. They offered advice, but no cash, noting that Meier's own efforts and the capital he'd already consumed far exceeded their expectations anyway.
Right. This section also contains some really stark prophecies and warnings for Earth's future, doesn't it? From the source, of course.
Yes, very stark. For 1977 and the years immediately following, they predicted increased deaths from violence, criminality, growing mischief from terrorists.
And the source places blame there.
It does. The source states the blame lies primarily on the nation of Israel and the states supporting it. We're just reporting impartially what is stated in the source material here.
Understood. What about natural disasters?
Major geological changes were also foreseen. New islands forming from undersea volcanoes starting near Japan, existing islands and continents sinking or shifting. Severe earthquakes predicted in specific regions.
Which ones?
The San Francisco-Alaska Trench area, parts of Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Africa, Oceania, and Russia. A pretty broad swath.
And the overall message was urgent.
Extremely. The source emphasizes that time is short for Earth humans to save themselves, and the solution offered is twofold. Stop exploiting the planet and implement strict worldwide birth control for at least 7 years.
7 years straight.
Yes. And as of the date of this source material, late 76 or early 77, they claimed only about 4 to 5 years remain to get aligned with nature's laws and avert further, perhaps worse, catastrophe.
That's a heavy deadline. The group center itself was also urgent.
Very much so. Finding a suitable, safe location. Semjase reportedly showed Meier potential safe zones on maps, mentioning a narrow channel in Switzerland, possibly near a place called Hinterschmidruti.
And did they think they'd find a place?
The source predicts the group property would be bought in early 1978, despite difficulties and intrigues. It notes the cost, around 500,000 Swiss francs, was an issue.
Yuck.
Semjase states that reason-carrying impulses would be sent to potential decisive helpers. Again, that subtle influence mentioned.
Okay. Finally, what about the future beyond that? Incarnations.
Yes, the source mentions specific individuals from Meier's group are expected to reappear through incarnation between the years 2033 and 2072.
And Meier himself.
He is also predicted to be the center of his group again, but after 800 years. The exact date, though, is kept secret in the notes, specifically to prevent him being turned into an idol.
Right. Planning ahead, it seems. Before we wrap things up, it's probably worth noting that amidst all the really heavy history and these stark warnings, the source material does also include some, unique, even kind of lighthearted personal touches and interactions.
Yeah, that's true. It's not all dense pronouncements and cosmic history. There are moments that give you a little glimpse of the alleged personalities involved.
Like Pleiadians, the other supposed Pleiadian wanting to try Meier's motorbike.
Right. The notes actually describe it as a barbarous adventure that she found really interesting and apparently wanted to use for a longer time. That's definitely a detail you don't necessarily expect in, official contact notes.
Not really.
Oh.
Or Semjase's reaction when Meier gave her a gift, some soft fabric.
Yes. She was apparently clearly delighted by how soft and fine it was. The quote is something like, "I enjoy taking it. Yes, I am so much delighted by it." It sounds quite, human in its appreciation.
Yeah, it does. There's also that unique description of the alleged teletransmission, how Meier experienced it.
Oh, right. He recounts suddenly finding himself just standing in the road after being transported instantly from the ship, feeling, as he put it, like he had grown from out of the ground.
Strange sensation.
Very. These little moments, along with notes about them conveying greetings back and forth between the Pleiadians and the group members on Earth, especially mentioning thanks for Olga's care for Meier, they do suggest a level of mutual respect, maybe even fondness, described in the notes.
Mm-hmm. But the goodbyes weren't always easy, were they?
No, sometimes described as difficult. Warnings were often shared during departures, and the notes specifically mention Semjase consciously adapting her language and her manner of speaking over time to better match Meier's more direct, perhaps rougher style.
Interesting adaptation. And finally, there's that really odd incident mentioned briefly. Something about a triangular ship and dwarfs.
Ah, yes, that one's quite strange. The source describes them as beings from a time shift, who somehow got stuck here, can't return to their own time or world.
From a time shift.
One of them apparently left footprints that Meier saw because the being flew too low and some kind of small float means vehicle near him is just sort of thrown in there, another layer of weirdness.
Another puzzle piece in a very large, very complex puzzle presented by these notes. So there you have it. That was our deep dive into these particular source materials. Wendelle C. Stevens' message from the Pleiades Volume 3.
Yeah, we've covered a really massive range of claims presented in these alleged contact notes. Everything from specific sightings, explained by claimed advanced technology,
to these sweeping historical narratives covering millennia, light years, glimpses into a supposed extraterrestrial society.
and some very intense warnings about Earth's future, along with advice, critiques, and even prophecies.
And it's crucial to remember, as we've said throughout, our exploration today was focused solely on presenting the information as it's contained within this specific source material, as recorded in these alleged contact notes by Billy Meier.
Absolutely. This material lays out claims of just immense scope. And it also describes the difficulties supposedly faced by both sides, the human contactee and the alleged extraterrestrial beings in communicating truth, dealing with human skepticism, navigating self-interest, and even admitted manipulations.
Which really leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to carry forward. Given the sheer scope and the intricate detail of the claims presented in this source, and considering the challenges described by both the human and the alleged alien parties in conveying truth and dealing with human reactions,
Yeah.
how do you, hearing this information secondhand, approach discerning what might be real, what could be meaningful? And how should claims like these, regardless of their ultimate origin, influence your understanding of ourselves and maybe our place in the cosmos?
Definitely plenty to think about. We hope this deep dive gave you some interesting perspectives based on the source.